Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. Backstory. Before I met my current husband Jack, he was married and divorced. His ex-wife Sarah was a few years older than him when they married in 2016. He was 19, fresh out of high school. It wasn't a love match, but rather a practical arrangement. Sarah needed financial aid for college, but her wealthy father's income made her ineligible. By getting married, she could apply independently. Jack worked in tech sales while taking classes part-time. Between his income and their combined financial aid, Sarah attended full-time. They graduated together in 2020. Though they weren't deeply in love, they got along well enough. As Jack's career took off, they enjoyed an increasingly comfortable lifestyle, buying and selling their starter home, then purchasing a nicer house. Jack leased them both new vehicles. By 2021, Jack felt they'd grown apart. Sarah agreed. During their divorce discussions, Jack was generous since Sarah's nonprofit job paid modestly. He offered her all their household furnishings, which he'd purchased, the remaining payments on her luxury SUV lease, $650/month in his name, half of his substantial savings and retirement accounts fully funded by him, as Sarah spent her disposable income on designer clothes and never saved. "Sarah, I want to make this transition as smooth as possible," Jack had said during their kitchen table negotiations. "I know the lease payments are steep, but I'll cover them until it's up." They used a basic divorce service and split amicably within 90 days. 3 months later, I met Jack through mutual friends. Sarah started dating Marcus, a successful hedge fund manager. The complication: after I moved in with Jack in early 2023, he wanted to switch careers into software development. This meant zero income during a 4-month coding boot camp, then a gradual ramp-up period. My salary could barely cover our bills and my dying car's replacement, let alone Sarah's $650 monthly lease. "I don't think I should keep paying for Sarah's car now that she's married to Marcus," Jack said one evening. "They make triple what we do combined." We consulted a lawyer who confirmed the car payments qualified as modifiable alimony since Sarah had remarried. Jack called Sarah to explain. "Sarah, I need to talk to you about the car payments," he began. "What about them?" she asked sharply. "With this career change, I can't afford them anymore. Since you're married now." "No, absolutely not." Click. A week later, he tried again, warning about potential legal action. Sarah was unmoved. "Marcus and I discussed it. The car stays with me." Jack filed the court paperwork himself. Sarah called immediately. "We should discuss this in person." When Sarah and Marcus arrived, their compromise was laughable. Jack should pay an early termination fee plus fund a new, cheaper lease. The total cost would exceed the current arrangement. "That's not happening," Jack said firmly. "The car needs to come back to me." "Well," Sarah smirked, "our lawyer Joe says you don't have a chance in court." The revenge. On court day, Sarah was conspicuously absent. The judge ruled in Jack's favor by default. Jack executed his plan methodically. Called Sarah, she refused to surrender the keys, ordered replacement keys from the dealership, arranged a tow truck and sheriff's deputy at her workplace. The scene played out perfectly. Sarah emerging from her office to find her SUV on a flatbed truck, her face transitioning from shock to disbelief. "You can't do this!" she sputtered. "Actually, I can." Jack handed her the court order while the deputy nodded confirmation. "But Joe said, he specifically said you didn't have a snowball's chance." "Wait, Joe the mortgage broker? That's your legal expert?" "He said since it wasn't labeled as alimony." "Well, maybe you should have shown up to court to make that argument." As Jack walked away, Sarah shouted, "How am I supposed to get home?" "Call your wealthy husband, the one who was fine letting your ex subsidize your lifestyle." The tow driver later commented, "That was the most satisfying repo I've ever done," and gave us a discount. I took over the SUV payments, we got married, started a family, and Jack's software career took off. Sarah still glares when we cross paths at the grocery store. The next one is an entitled people's story. I never thought I'd be dealing with such ridiculous neighbor drama at my peaceful lake cabin, but here we are. This all started about 8 months ago when Karen and her husband Bob moved into the cabin next door to mine. Let me give you some context about the layout first. My cabin sits on a beautiful 5-acre lot on Lake Mitchell that I inherited from my grandfather. He built it himself back in the 70s, and I spent every summer there as a kid. The only way to access the property is via a private road that crosses a creek using a wooden bridge that my grandfather also built. The bridge sits entirely on my property, but I've always allowed neighbors to use it since it's the only practical way to access several of the lake lots. The previous owners of the cabin next door were wonderful people who lived there for 20 years. They'd chip in for bridge maintenance without me even asking, and we'd have cookouts together during the summer. But they retired and moved to Florida last year, selling to Karen and Bob. At first, things seemed fine. They introduced themselves when they moved in, and I explained about the shared bridge use and maintenance arrangement. Karen seemed a bit uptight, but Bob was friendly enough. That changed about a month later when I got a text from Karen demanding that I do something about the noise from my dock. You see, I have a floating dock where I keep my pontoon boat. On warm weekend afternoons, I often have friends over to hang out on the dock, play music at a reasonable volume, grill, and enjoy the lake. We're never out there past sunset and keep the noise moderate. You can barely hear the music from 50 feet away. I politely explained this to Karen, but she wasn't having it. She sent a barrage of texts claiming the music was destroying her peace and quiet and that she'd call the authorities if I didn't stop immediately. I checked our county noise ordinances to confirm I wasn't violating anything and texted back that while I'd try to be considerate, I was well within my rights to have reasonable gatherings on my own property. This set off a month of escalating harassment. Karen would stand at the edge of her property filming us whenever we were on the dock. She'd yell about calling the police, who came out twice and found no violations. She even started trying to get other neighbors to complain, but they all told her to pound sand since they'd never had issues with my gatherings. Things came to a head in late June when I hosted a small birthday party for my nephew. We had about 10 people over, mostly family, grilling and swimming off the dock. Karen stormed over onto my property screaming about the noise. When I told her she was trespassing and needed to leave, she knocked over our grill, thankfully no one was burned, and dumped a cooler of drinks into the lake. I called the police and they gave her a warning for trespassing and vandalism, but declined to press charges since the damage was minimal. Karen was livid about being humiliated by the police visit. That's when she started making threats about the bridge. "That rickety death trap needs to be condemned," she ranted in a neighborhood Facebook group. "It's not up to code and I'm going to make sure it gets shut down before someone gets killed." I had the bridge professionally inspected after this to document that it was structurally sound and well maintained. The inspector noted it was exceptionally well built and showed no signs of structural issues. I posted the inspection report to the Facebook group to calm any concerns. This apparently enraged Karen even further. She started calling county offices trying to get the bridge declared unsafe. When that failed, she attempted to claim the bridge was partially on her property. It wasn't, and that I needed her permission to use it. I didn't. After consulting with my lawyer, I decided to install security cameras covering the bridge and the approach from both directions. I had a bad feeling about Karen's escalating behavior and wanted documentation if anything happened. Thank God I did. About 2 weeks after installing the cameras, I headed up to the cabin on a Friday evening. As I approached the bridge, my heart stopped. The entire middle section had collapsed into the creek below. The support beams appeared to have been cut clean through. I immediately called the police and pulled up the security footage on my phone. The cameras had captured everything in crystal clear HD, Karen and Bob approaching the bridge at 2 a.m. the previous night with power tools. The footage showed them methodically cutting through the main support beams while discussing how this would teach him a lesson about noise. When the police arrived, I showed them the footage. They were able to clearly identify Karen and Bob, and the deliberate nature of the damage made this a serious crime. The officers went to their cabin and placed them both under arrest for criminal mischief and vandalism, but that was just the beginning of their problems. The bridge would cost over $75,000 to replace properly. Their actions had also cut off access to several other properties, leading to multiple civil lawsuits from other neighbors who couldn't reach their cabins. And since they had deliberately destroyed infrastructure to damage property values, they were facing felony charges. Karen and Bob quickly tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding. They were just inspecting the bridge and it collapsed accidentally. But the security footage showed them spending over an hour deliberately cutting through supports while discussing their plan to destroy it. Their lawyer advised them to take a plea deal. They ended up pleading guilty to criminal mischief and paying full restitution for the bridge replacement. They also had to settle lawsuits from 3 other property owners who couldn't access their cabins. All told, their little revenge scheme cost them over $200,000 in damages, fines, and legal fees. The best part? They were forced to sell their cabin to pay for everything. The new owners are a lovely retired couple who bring us cookies and actually appreciate our occasional dock parties. Karen and Bob had to move back to the city, and I haven't heard from them since. I did make one change after rebuilding the bridge. I had my lawyer draw up formal easement agreements with all the neighbors regarding bridge use and maintenance. Everyone happily signed except Karen and Bob, who were specifically excluded. The new bridge is even better than the original, with steel-reinforced supports that would take more than a couple of angry neighbors with power tools to damage. The security cameras are still up though, just in case. You never know when another Karen might move in. A few months after this incident, I received notice that Karen and Bob were suing me for emotional distress and defamation. Their lawsuit claimed I had deliberately provoked them with my dock parties and that sharing the security footage with police and neighbors had ruined their reputation. They were demanding $500,000 in damages. My lawyer actually laughed when I forwarded him the lawsuit. This is what we call a frivolous lawsuit, he explained. They're hoping you'll settle just to avoid the hassle. But given their criminal conviction and the video evidence, this should be dismissed pretty quickly. He was right. At the first hearing, the judge was visibly annoyed when Karen and Bob's new lawyer tried to argue that I had forced them to destroy the bridge through my harassment via dock parties. The security footage was played in court, showing them gleefully discussing their plan to destroy my property. "Let me get this straight," the judge said, peering over his glasses at Karen and Bob. "You're suing the victim of your criminal activity for damages because you faced consequences for your actions. Motion to dismiss granted. And I'm ordering you to pay Mr. OP's legal fees for this frivolous suit." Karen started screaming in the courtroom about how unfair everything was, leading to a contempt of court charge and a night in jail. Bob looked like he wanted to sink into the floor and disappear. But the story doesn't end there. Remember those formal easement agreements I had drawn up? They became very relevant when the bank foreclosed on Karen and Bob's cabin. The new owners tried to claim they should automatically have bridge access, but my lawyer explained they'd need to sign the agreement first. This actually led to some interesting negotiations. The bank realized the property was worth significantly less without guaranteed bridge access, so they approached me about working something out. I agreed to grant an easement to any new owner provided they signed our standard maintenance agreement and paid a one-time infrastructure contribution of $10,000 toward future bridge maintenance. The bank wasn't happy, but they knew the property would be nearly unsellable without bridge access. They ended up reducing the asking price by $15,000 to account for this, which meant Karen and Bob lost even more money on their failed revenge scheme. The retired couple who bought the place had no issue signing the agreement and paying the contribution. "After what those awful people did, we completely understand wanting proper documentation and security," they told me. "They've become great neighbors and regular guests at our dock parties." I did hear through the grapevine that Karen and Bob's marriage didn't survive the financial stress of their actions. Bob filed for divorce, claiming Karen's uncontrollable rage had cost them their life savings. She apparently tried to blame him for everything in court, but the judge had seen the security footage showing them both equally involved. The whole incident actually brought our little lake community closer together. We now have an annual bridge party every summer where all the neighbors gather for a cookout on and around the new bridge. Everyone brings food and drinks, we play music at a reasonable volume, and celebrate having good neighbors instead of entitled ones. I still occasionally get questions from visitors about why there are so many security cameras watching a bridge in the middle of nowhere. I just smile and say, "Let me tell you a story about the importance of good security." The footage has become something of a legend in our area, a cautionary tale about the dangers of entitled behavior and misplaced revenge. Last I heard, Karen was trying to start a Facebook group for victims of dock party harassment, but couldn't find many members. Bob moved to another state and reportedly tells everyone who will listen about how one act of vandalism cost him his marriage, his savings, and his dream lake house. The new bridge has become something of a local landmark. We added a small plaque that reads, "Built 2024, Stronger Together," which most visitors assume is just a nice sentiment about community. Those of us who were here for the Karen incident know it has a deeper meaning. Sometimes it takes someone trying to tear something down to show you how to build it back better. I still have those security cameras, and I keep all the footage backed up to the cloud. Not because I'm worried about another attack, but because sometimes when I'm having a bad day, it's oddly satisfying to watch karma play out in 1080p HD. The footage of Karen being arrested while screaming about her rights to destroy my property is particularly therapeutic. The whole experience taught me valuable lessons about documentation, legal preparation, and the importance of community. But mostly it showed me that while revenge might be a dish best served cold, justice is best served with clear video evidence and a good lawyer. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a dock party to host. The music won't be too loud, but the laughter might be. That's just what happens when good neighbors get together to enjoy a beautiful day on the lake. Update. It's been a year since my last post, and a lot has happened that I thought you all might find interesting. First, remember how I mentioned Karen was trying to start that Facebook group about dock party harassment? Well, it backfired spectacularly. She started posting edited clips from my security footage, trying to paint herself as the victim. However, she didn't realize that posting my security footage without permission was illegal, and more importantly, editing it to create a false narrative constituted defamation. My lawyer contacted Facebook to have the content removed, and we filed a cease and desist order. Karen ignored it and created multiple new groups, each time posting more edited footage and making increasingly wild claims about how I had destroyed her life. She even started harassing my business's social media pages with fake reviews. My lawyer advised me to document everything, and we built a solid case against her. We filed a lawsuit for defamation, harassment, and copyright infringement since the security footage was my intellectual property. The evidence was overwhelming. We had screenshots of everything, including her admitting in private messages to other group members that she was going to make that bridge guy pay. The case went to court 3 months ago. Karen represented herself, always a bad idea, and tried to argue that she had a First Amendment right to tell her story. The judge wasn't impressed, especially when we showed how she'd edited the footage to remove the parts showing her destroying the bridge. The judge's ruling was better than we could have hoped for. Karen was ordered to pay $150,000 in damages plus my legal fees. She was also hit with a permanent injunction preventing her from posting anything about me, my property, or the bridge incident online. If she violates it, she faces automatic contempt of court charges. But here's where it gets really interesting. During the trial, we discovered Karen had been lying about her assets in her divorce from Bob. She'd hidden money in accounts under her mother's name to avoid paying her share of the bridge restitution and other damages. Bob's lawyer got wind of this and reopened their divorce case. This led to a separate investigation for perjury and fraud. Turns out Karen had hidden over $300,000 from the courts. She's now facing criminal charges for that. And Bob is getting everything she tried to hide plus damages. He actually reached out to apologize to me, explaining that Karen had been manipulating him for years with threats and emotional abuse. I should have stood up to her sooner, he told me over coffee last month. I knew destroying your bridge was wrong, but I was too scared of her reaction if I refused. That's not an excuse, but I want you to know how sorry I am for my part in it. I appreciated his honesty, and we've made peace. He's moved back to the area, though not to the lake, and has become an unexpected ally in dealing with Karen's continuing attempts at revenge. He's provided valuable documentation of her past behavior patterns and helped other victims of her harassment connect with my lawyer. As for the bridge itself, it's become something of a local success story. After hearing about what happened, a local engineering firm approached me about using it as a case study for their infrastructure security course. They even offered to install a state-of-the-art monitoring system that detects and reports any structural stress or tampering attempts in real time. The county also took notice. They've used our experience to create new guidelines for private infrastructure maintenance and security. I've been asked to consult on several similar cases where property owners needed help protecting shared access points from vandalism or abuse. The retired couple who bought Karen and Bob's old cabin have become close friends. They've actually helped me improve the property in ways I hadn't considered. Tom, the husband, is a retired civil engineer, and he's helped me design and implement better drainage around the bridge approaches, which will help prevent erosion and extend the structure's life. Our annual bridge party has grown into a proper community event. Last summer, over 50 people attended, including several county officials who presented us with a Community Infrastructure Excellence Award. The irony of getting an award because of Karen's attempt to destroy our community wasn't lost on anyone. The security cameras have stayed up, but they're now part of a larger security system that protects all the properties around the lake. Several neighbors pitched in to create a shared security network, with cameras covering all common areas and access points. It's already helped prevent 2 attempted break-ins at seasonal cabins and caught some kids trying to vandalize the community dock. Karen's legal troubles aren't over yet. The criminal case for hiding assets is proceeding, and 3 other people she harassed online have filed their own lawsuits using our case as a precedent. Her mother is also in trouble for helping hide the money, and the IRS is now involved because neither of them reported the hidden funds on their taxes. The whole experience has actually led to some positive changes in my life. I've started a consulting business helping other property owners deal with access rights and security issues. The combination of my experience with Karen and the knowledge I gained dealing with the legal aftermath has proved valuable to others in similar situations. I've also become much more involved in local government, particularly regarding property rights and infrastructure maintenance. Our lake community now has clear guidelines for shared access points, maintenance responsibilities, and dispute resolution procedures. Several other communities have used our documentation as a template for their own policies. Bob's transformation has been remarkable. After getting therapy and breaking free from Karen's influence, he's become an advocate for domestic abuse victims, particularly men who feel trapped in emotionally abusive relationships. He's spoken at several events about how enabling an abusive partner's behavior can lead to serious legal consequences. Last week, I received notice that Karen's criminal trial for the hidden assets will begin next month. Her lawyer has approached me about testifying regarding her pattern of behavior, which I've agreed to do. The prosecutor believes she's facing significant jail time given the amount of money involved and her previous criminal conviction for destroying the bridge. Through all of this, I've kept my dock parties going, though now they're more popular than ever. The music might still bother some people, but as Tom likes to say, it's the sound of community. We've actually installed a professional sound system with carefully placed speakers that direct the sound over the water, minimizing any disturbance to neighboring properties. The bridge stands stronger than ever, both physically and as a symbol of our community's resilience. The security cameras haven't caught any more attempts at vandalism, but they've recorded countless moments of neighbors helping neighbors, kids learning to fish, and families making memories. Karen's attempts to destroy our community ended up making it stronger, more connected, and better protected. Sometimes I think about sending her a thank you card in jail, but I suspect she still wouldn't understand the irony. As for me, I've learned that standing your ground against bullies, documenting everything, and building strong community relationships are the best defenses against entitled behavior. The bridge incident could have turned me bitter or paranoid, but instead it showed me the value of preparation, persistence, and having good neighbors who have your back. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go help Tom install some solar-powered lighting on the bridge. We're hosting a nighttime fishing tournament next weekend, and the whole community is invited. Well, almost the whole community. Karen's still not allowed on the bridge. The next one is a malicious compliances story. This is a small bit of maliciousness that happened years ago, but to this day it's still one of my favorite stories to tell, so there needs to be a bit of context to this one for you to understand the beauty of what happened. I was in a traditional kung fu school for 9 years. My Sifu, teacher, was one of the most honest and respectable men I've ever known. In this school, there was certain etiquette you had to follow out of both respect for the art and your fellow students. We had things like bowing before entering doorways, always facing north to take off our sash, stuff like that. Keep in mind that we weren't just teaching students here, we fostered a family and treated one another as if we were all brothers as sisters. One of the rules was that men wore their sashes on the right while women wore their sashes on the left. I am a trans male, and my Sifu was one of very few people who knew this. Also, I present very androgynous. My Sifu and I talked about it when I came out to him because I was concerned about how it would affect the etiquette of the school. And we both agreed that neither of us cared how I wore my sash, so I just kept it on the left out of habit. Very friendly conversation. At my school, we did a traditional performance every year for Chinese New Year called a lion head dance. If you look it up online, it's both intriguing and hilarious to watch because it's essentially two people underneath a large, fluffy papier-mâché lion. We would do this for restaurants, schools, or event centers. We even got to perform for the Chinese consulate at one time. Basically, one person is in the head of the lion while the other operates the tail, and we work together to cleanse the space to ensure a year of good fortune for the establishment and scare away evil spirits. Everyone always loved these events, and it was some of the funnest performances I had ever done. There's drums, dancing, firecrackers, the whole deal. I was almost always in a lion with my Sifu because we made a surprisingly good team. One year, we went to this little Chinese restaurant who hired us to do our normal thing. We get there, we set up, lay out the equipment, and begin stretching before the performance. This performance was one lion with me in the tail and my Sifu in the head. As we're talking and getting ready, suddenly the owner of the establishment walks over to my Sifu and I with the most disappointed look on his face. My Sifu asks if everything is alright, and this guy just started in on my Sifu through gritted teeth. He originally asked why I was standing there, and my Sifu, while confused, said that I was his tail for tonight. The owner said that this was highly disrespectful because a woman shouldn't be in the performance and should never be in the lion. My Sifu, with a now deadpan look on his face, chuckled and basically said, we don't live in the days of Chinese dynasties anymore, sir. This is my student, I am their teacher, and they are more than welcome to perform and represent my school." The owner kept on going off about how it's disrespectful to the culture and how I shouldn't even be in the show because I was a female. My Sifu looked back at me, looked at the owner, got a cheeky little grin on his face and said, "No problem." He turned to me, grabbed my sash, twisted it to my right side, bowed and addressed me as Didi, meaning younger brother, before turning back to the owner. He had the most shocked and appalled look on his face, and it took me everything I had not to just bust up laughing. The owner huffed, told us to just do the show, and stormed off. And just as a little cherry on the top of this interaction, I went to get into the tail and my Sifu stopped me, motioning for me to get into the head of the lion. So I got to lead the show that night, and the owner just had to sit back and deal with the fact that he didn't get his way by throwing a sexist fit. The year after, we got hired by the same restaurant, and my Sifu, instead of rejecting it, made absolutely sure that the performance that night was all female students. The owner didn't say a word. The next one is an entitled People's Story. Hello and welcome. I'm a 24-year-old female, but at the time of the story, I was around 19 and doing a professional course of goldsmith. This story is about a 15-16-year-old female classmate being an entitled jerk that thinks she is the center of the world and tried to put us, me and the rest of the class, in trouble for something we didn't do. Let's call her Jenny. Here's some things that you need to know about the school, and the professional course for those who don't know, IDK, how it works in your country. You may be wondering how a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old got to the same class. It's because my course is for those who haven't completed the 12th grade, either because you just finished the 9th grade. You can choose a particular course for the rest of high school, or you just changed courses, or for whatever reason you couldn't pass the 12th grade, which that was my reason in another course. Either way, that made my class age range vary from 15 years old to 23 years old. We had a problem at the beginning of the year because there weren't enough students in others' courses to form a class. The minimum is 10 students. So, to solve the problem, the school decided to reunited all students for the others' courses to the main course of the school, the Goldsmith one, until the others' courses have enough students. Then the students can ask for a transfer. So, as you can imagine, not everyone was happy, Jenny included, and she often complained about it. Right, Jenny. Let's just go to the context of the story first. Jenny was having a hard time with her boyfriend and wanted everyone to know about it constantly. I felt bad for her at first because she would cry about him, but then she would have moments where she would check out guys on Instagram and say she was going to hook up with them and that will show him, boyfriend, and then continue to cry about him. W would also complain about the school, the teachers, her parents, other students for other classes, her whole life basically. Also, every conversation had to be about her and her situation with her boyfriend, like, we get it, geez, I'm sorry that things aren't working out with him, but we heard it like 30 times in a single conversation. She also took a liking to me because I was nice to everyone and to her too at the first week of school. I had no backbone back then, and she took it to her advantage. We had a classmate that lived very close to the school, so we hang out sometime at his place during lunchtime. Jenny always found an excuse to not let me go with them, even though I was invited. And even if I said no multiple times, I always gave up and go with her because I didn't want her to be alone, and for some reason, I wanted to be polite. I was a naive moron. Once, she took me to her apartment to show me something. BTW. She said she lived close, but we walked for more than 15 minutes, and I thought we were going to hang out. But nope, she forgot her keys to the mail or something and needed me to reach out for the letters because my hands are skinny and I have long fingers. I actually thought we were going to hang out at her place after that, but nope. We came back to school. So, yeah, I've never considered her a friend. I was just being with her to be polite, but I really should have stayed away from her and hold my ground. Now, the story you were waiting for. What happened to have the cops called on us? In the first class of the morning on that particular day, the teacher was doing the usual call. When it came to one of the guys of the class, Jenny got upset. Jenny. Oh no, don't say this name, teacher. Theater. Huh? Why not? We all looked at Jenny, puzzled. Jenny, it's the name of my boyfriend and I'm mad at him. Just hearing his name makes me mad. We just stared at her. What? The poor dude just happened to have the same name as her boyfriend. What was that? But we all shrugged off, and the morning continued without any incident. At the end of break time, I was walking along with some of my classmates to our next class when we heard a commotion near our lockers rooms. Since we are all nosy, we went to check it out. When we arrived, Jenny was handing her phone to Mark, M20, one of our classmates, and the rest of the class was right there too. Mark listened at the other end of the phone for 2 seconds before angrily handing back to Jenny and tried to walk away, but Jenny was starting to get physical and Mark was about to be it too. Just so you know, Jenny was around my height at 158m, 5'2" feet, and Mark was around 180m, 5'9" feet. So yeah, it's basically a Chihuahua barking against a Doberman. We all separated them, but the school was filled with angry yelling and the staff was getting involved. Jenny grabbed her stuff and ran out of the school. Apparently, she had an argument with some of the boys of our class because of the scene she made this morning. I can't remember what was the reason for what she did next, but Jenny slapped Mark in the face. Then she called her cousin, which led to the phone thing in front of the lockers. Her cousin was threatening Mark that he was on his way to the school and he was going to beat him up. I can't recall what Mark said for this to happen, but I remember my other classmates saying he didn't do anything to deserve a slap and a threat. When we all calmed down, the staff got agitated and something happened outside. We all went to the school entrance, and what do we see? Jenny talking to two cops. There is a police station really close to our school, so it was normal they came rather quickly. But still, we were all shocked when we saw the cops. Why were they here? We watched the cops talking to Jenny, then to our director and our main teacher and back to Jenny. We wanted to see more, but we were told to just go to class. Jenny's cousin never came as far as I know. Jenny came back at the afternoon break time. I was about to eat my delicious chocolate bread at the school bar when she just appeared out of nowhere. I asked her what happened for the cops to come, and she said to not worry about that. And you know what she did next? She asked to eat half of my chocolate bread. The audacity! I was so fed up with her, and I finally said no, very firmly, and took my precious treasure and sat somewhere else. I looked to see her reaction, and even if she had her back at me, I saw a teacher talking to her with a concerned look on her face. I guessed Jenny was crying, but I didn't care and ate in silence. She didn't come back after that. We got word of what happened to have the police to appear. Apparently, she claimed that we made a group chat on Instagram talking bad about her on back, and she infiltrated the group to get evidence, and we were all bullying her every day. We didn't do any of that. And soon, the police discovered that all of the account of the group chat was created by Jenny to get us in trouble. The school had enough of her and told her that while this incident would have her expelled, they won't do that, but advised her to walk out of her own, as she wasn't welcome anymore. They didn't expel her because they wanted her to still have a chance to find another school that will take her in, since all of the other courses of our school didn't want her. I don't know what happened to her after that, and in all honesty, I couldn't care less. I just hope she got help, because she was really crazy. That got me thinking, now that I'm writing this story, if the group chat was already there with enough conversation and a bunch of fake accounts when she talked to the cops, then it means she was planning of taking action sooner or later. That was premeditated. Anyway, sorry for the long text. There was another incident at my school with my class, but that's a story for another time. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.